Welcome to Accounting High.
What does high performance look like? And then measuring the team member against that, against what performance looks like. Obviously, we need to perform as a business. It's for the team member. I think the greatest fulfillment, and this may trump every other experience or every other element of the team experience, is feeling what it's like to perform highly. And that virtuous loop is, as employees perform well, then they're fulfilled. And as each employee performs well, then the business performs, and it reinforces itself.
A virtuous loop. I like that. That spirals upward.
May I have your attention, please?
Welcome to Accounting High. It's freshman year at a brand new school. Here, we have no rules in place as we're on a mission to set our own traditions. So hang tight and learn with us as we grow. At Accounting High, you can expect to gain knowledge in a completely different way than what you may be used to, with some fun and oftentimes colorful conversations involving some of the best teachers in the accounting industry. Whether you loved high school or you hated it, here's your chance to be a part of an unforgettable experience redone. While you're here, don't forget to follow us on Spotify or subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you may be listening to us right now so you don't miss out on any new episodes. And feel free to leave us a 5-star review letting us know how the school year is treating you. In addition, share this episode on social media, tagging us at Accounting High. So sit back, relax, and open your mind because class is in session.
I repeat, may I have your attention, please?
This is another public service announcement brought to you in part
by Accounting High.
The views and events expressed here are
of the next generation of accounting and tech professionals leading this space.
The events and suggestions are not to be taken lightly. Children should not partake in the listening
of this podcast.
Anything else?
Yeah.
So without further ado, introducing the star of our show,
Scotty and Dave Olsen.
We're gonna have a problem here.
Dave Olsen is back.
It's great to be back, Scotty.
Students, welcome, Dave. Dave, what is your subject at Accounting High? You're teaching a class here. What subject is this?
Well, we're calling it People Experience. It could be seen as broader than that, leadership, business building, but I think People Experience is a good way to describe it.
I like leadership, entrepreneurship, one of those. There's in typical high school classes, I don't think you have any leadership classes. I don't think they teach these kind of things in high school. So that's where it's been hard for me to find alignment or metaphors or ways to bridge high school, because that's the point of this whole show, is to teach our students things that they didn't learn in school. So
exactly. Well, this is our chance to redefine what high school could have been and should have been.
Well, so you reached out to me a little while ago, earlier this year, and why don't you just share with the students what you said when you reached out?
Yeah, really, I see an opportunity in the accounting profession, the accounting industry, to talk more about leadership and talk more about the experience that people have. And it really has a lot to do with bridging the gap, and I've heard it described as the no man's land between the kind of the sole practitioner, smaller practice, to more of a larger structured business with a leadership team and things like that. And there's not a lot of talk about how to bridge that gap, how to get there. And it's a journey that I've been on for the last few years, and I thought it might have a little bit to share. I'm still in it. I'm still learning, and but I thought there might be something to share as part of that journey.
Yeah. So then we talked about doing a series on this, and almost immediately after we talked about it, you put together an entire syllabus and curriculum for the PX, People Experience. I love it because it starts with a P. We've done several episodes on people, but they were very unstructured. So this is a great way to start delivering some real education at what we're calling a school here. So we're gonna go over today is part one. We're gonna do the curriculum, and intro this course and just talk about it as far as we'll go through the curriculum.
Yeah, that sounds great. And that, curriculum that I came up with soon after we talk is something that's been in the works for quite a while within what we're doing at Nimble. And it was really helpful for me to think through kind of what is a journey we've been on, and how does that look in kind of codifying what we've been doing, and how might it be helpful for other company owners to think through. So yeah, that was the intention for this first episode, is just to go through an overview of what that curriculum looks like, why we're doing it, and kind of give a teaser and a preview for what we'll dive into in future episodes.
So since your first episode came out a while ago, back Sons of CPA's days, one of the earliest ones, let's enlighten our listeners for who you are and what you've built, because that's pretty impressive in and of itself. Let's get the cliff notes of that one. Yeah,
really, like I mentioned earlier, we're talking about people experience, but it's bigger than that. It's about the journey of leadership and actually building a business. And that really describes my journey in building Nimble, is really discovering, what does leadership look like? What does that mean? And how does it get applied in, building a team? And that's really what this is all about. And a big part of that is, I, about 5 years ago, came across a kind of a leadership methodology. And then the creator of that leadership methodology, his name's Brandon Craig, and his firm is Ontacore. It really shaped how I see leadership and how I see building a business, and actually entered a formal executive coaching relationship probably about 3 or 4 years ago in that. So that's been a huge benefit to me as a leader in shaping that education, that experience of applying leadership in a team and building a team. And so backing up a little bit before that, really going back 15 years is kind of how I could define the journey of building a business. And as a recap from some of what we talked about in that last episode a little while ago, is I started in public accounting with one of the big four and jumped off to become the CFO of a startup company. And soon after that, I realized that being a CFO of a startup is not normally a full-time job. And so became a contract CFO for a venture capital fund and several different startups. And for about 5 years, starting in 2007, it was really just me as a sole contract CFO. And during that time, I didn't, other than being in the big four, I didn't have any really exposure to or context around the partnership model in a CPA firm. To me, it was all about VC-backed startups, SaaS companies, building a structure in that way. And so that's what I saw as building a business. And that's really shaped how I see building a business, even if it's not kind of traditional in the accounting industry. So for those 5 years, it was really just me. In 2012, I started hiring offshore bookkeepers just to help get some of the work done. I wasn't looking to really build a business around it. I was just with these startup companies, I was the accounting department, and it was mostly.
So this is 2012.
Yeah,
Around,
2012.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So I really was the accounting department, and most of it, given the stage of the company, it was the fundraising and cash flow and all that kind of CFO level stuff. But I also had to get the bookkeeping done, and so it was either me doing it or I'd look to find some help. So I discovered the offshore model and hired some offshore bookkeepers. So from 2012 to 2018, it was just me and a few offshore bookkeepers, starting in India and then moving to the Philippines. And it was really 2018 that I got serious about actually seeing it as a business and looking to really build a team and a structure. And at that point, it was I was handling call it $500,000 in revenue just on my own with those CFO clients. And
what changed? Why 2018? Why after 6 years did you start seeing it as a business?
Yeah, there's a lot of factors that kind of came together. One is, I was really kind of by my nature, and this really held me back, and I was a lot slower than I could have been because of this, but I was really just heads down on my own. I wasn't really looking to a broader industry or looking to create relationships. And I thought I was inventing the cloud accounting industry myself. Like I, created a structure and processes and online tools to get all the CFO and accounting work done for these clients. And I really kind of had blinders on. I didn't really realize what was going on in the broader industry. And it was actually 2017 that I went to my first conference and started having my eyes open to others who were doing that. I went to actually Accountex in Boston, and probably several sessions that I saw, but one that really stood out to me was Patty Scharf from Catching Clouds. She gave a session. I don't remember what it was about, but I just remember that it opened my eyes to other people doing what I thought I had actually made up. And so that was one factor in realizing that there really is there's an industry here, there's a business opportunity, and I kind of felt that desire to have a greater impact beyond just the few clients I was able to serve on my own.
Was it humbling, or was it inspiring, or was it embarrassing that you thought you made it up, but then found out, wow, there's other people doing the same thing?
Yeah, I think it was partly embarrassing that I'd gone for, I guess, 10 years at that point, just on my own. And what I've learned in the last 5 years and how much my mind has been opened by being involved in the industry, I didn't realize how much further along I could have been if I would have discovered those relationships earlier. So that was the embarrassing part, but the inspiring part was realizing that I was onto something, and others had discovered it too. And it was still, 2018, fairly early days, and I guess you could say it's still fairly early days in the cloud accounting industry. And so,
oh, for sure.
So yeah, so that really inspired me and to build something bigger than I had. The other factor, I mentioned this coach, Brandon Craig. I actually met him in mid 2017, and he was looking for a CFO and bookkeeping for his company. And we sat down for basically a sales meeting, and as is his nature as a business coach, executive coach, he started asking me about my business and my plans and goals. And I started sharing that I felt this draw to build something bigger, but I also had a great lifestyle. I had a family, I had young kids, and I was basically able to do what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it. And I thought growing any bigger would be a sacrifice to that. And it seems so simple when I say it, but it had a profound impact on me when he looked at me in that moment and said, why can't you have both? Why can't you build a business and have the life that you want? And just something struck me to the core that struck me as true. Like, yeah, that is possible. I don't see it. I don't see how right now, but I see that that's possible. And that's really the kind of the foundation of everything we're talking about here in this episode and in this series of episodes, is how to build both the life that you want and the business that you want. And that's really through building a team and creating an experience for people that they want to be with you. They're inspired, and they want to build with you. And so that's where it all started, in about, a little over 5 years ago.
So in the industry, everybody talks about customer experience. It's always about the customer experience, but we've said this on the show multiple times. The people that are more important to the owner, not the customers. It's your team. It's your people. That's the most, and we don't really talk about creating that people experience that your team takes pride in, that they enjoy coming to work, or making it easier for them. There's so many levels of developing people and becoming a leader. I'm still learning a lot of this, and there's so much to learn here. That's why we're doing a series on it. That's why we're talking about it. I have a lot to learn, and you have a lot to teach. But continue with the story, because there's still more here.
Yeah, and I'll say I have a ton to learn too. So, and this has been part of my learning process, is to be able to think about it and share it in this forum. But I think
best way to learn is to teach.
Exactly.
Right?
But I've learned a few things along the way, so I'm grateful to be able to share it. So, yeah, so that was in mid 2017, both when I talked to Brandon and started having my eyes open to the industry out there. And it was early 2018 that I formed a partnership with a regional CPA firm, where they're more of a traditional kind of partnership structure, but very well respected, very successful in the region. And they, still, and back then the CAS was a big buzzword. Traditional CPA firms could add CAS to their offering, and it's a great growth opportunity. And they had considered building CAS internally within their own company. But I got to talking to one of the partners who I had had a relationship from before, and they realized that what I had already built was what they were looking to build. And so I partnered with them in early 2018. And that really kicked off the process of building a business and building a team. About a year and a half later, we realized that the synergies between the type of clients that we were focused on as the CAS part of it wasn't quite what we thought they would be with the auditing and tax clients they had. So in mid 2019, I bought them out and brought on another partner and continued building from there. So that's a side note to the story. The company was called Tanalytics at the time, and at that time we rebranded to Nimble, and kept building from there.
Yeah, and so you've had an impressive run since then. Since you've been building Nimble, you also have a staffing company that is also Nimble. Was it Nimble Staffing?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Very, very original there. But that was like sort of an offshoot, a branch of Nimble. So frame, at least for the conversation, frame about how many people you have on the staffing company and here at Nimble.
Yeah, so I mentioned I started hiring offshore bookkeepers in 2012. First, we built it for our own services, and then as people heard that we had an office there and people available, we started hiring full-time people and placing them with others. And then, like you said, we spun that off as a kind of sister company called Nimble Staffing. So we have about 35 people in the U.S. right now. We have about 25 in the Philippines that are dedicated to Nimble's accounting business. And then we have another 30 or 40 that are staffed out to other companies.
So about 100 altogether, although 30 or 40 technically are working for others, but still.
Yeah.
You're qualified to talk about people is what I was getting at there. And again, still learning. All of us are still learning. As you grow, you hit different milestones along the way, but just getting to the point, I think a lot of our listeners too, we've defined our audience as somewhat of an early stage firm owner, getting to the point where they are above $1 million and they can work themselves out of a job. They could grow and they could scale, whatever that means, and get out of no man's land, or decide they're going to stay a solopreneur. But we want to help them get there. And that first step is becoming a better leader and creating this people experience. So let's talk about the purpose of the course.
Yeah, and I think it would be helpful to frame up the milestones as well, just to give a sense for what those steps were, if that's okay. To start there. So I mentioned when I was on my own, at the end of that in 2017, it was about $500,000 in revenue. In 2019, it was about $1.5 million. And I see that kind of as a starting point of entering no man's land and also beginning to build more of a leadership team, and not just, me being involved in everything and managing more based on tasks and things to get done, as opposed to creating other leaders within the business. So that was 2019, $1.5 million. And fast forward to the end of 2022, we're over 4 million ARR. And I feel like we got to the point where we have a leadership team in place. And really the milestone was when I was able to transition to only having really other leaders, other executives reporting to me. And I don't have any direct involvement, or I shouldn't say involvement, direct responsibility for day-to-day operations. So, and that for us looks like, client work was the main milestone is getting out of that. I really have, a few kind of long-term relationships I might keep in touch with and oversee a little more closely than others, but really for the most part, not really no day-to-day client work. So what that looks like is, my partner, Shane, he runs the client service. We have Danny, our head of sales. We have Grant, our head of people, and Christian, our head of internal operations. So those 4 leaders report directly to me, and they are what I would see as leaders and executives in the way I define that. And this is kind of the beginning of defining the purpose of this course. Dope. Is to create leaders around you that can operate based on outcomes and not on tasks. And I think that's a really important distinction. It's when you have leaders that you can, as the leader, you can create the vision, you can co-create outcomes with other leaders, but then they can go out and execute based on outcomes with minimal input into what it looks like to create those outcomes. And that's how I would define success in creating other leaders on a leadership team.
That is beautiful. And that's again, like the hardest thing to learn and take action on, because, in theory, everybody thinks everybody thinks they have the right setup. A lot of times, when we're building and we're hiring people, we think we have the right people. We think we have the right people in the right seats, and we think we're doing things the right way. But talk about tracking outcomes, because that's something that we've talked about with Ron Baker. We talked a lot about on the show. Dive a little bit deeper into that and creating leaders that can operate on outcomes.
Yeah, one way to look at that is using the EOS traction framework that I'm sure a lot of listeners are familiar with. It's when you can define, as a leadership team, agree on annual outcomes, which I don't think are technically part of EOS, but we've created that extension that way. And then we break those annual outcomes down into the quarterly rocks. And once you agree on those outcomes and agree on those rocks each quarter, then that should be most of the input that's required for the leaders. They have those rocks, and if they're well defined, those rocks define what an outcome looks like. What does success look like in creating that? And then it's really up to them to execute on that, to create their own details and tasks and day-to-day work that goes into creating that outcome.
I mean, an example of an annual outcome, one that you're tracking now or one that you have.
Yeah, I think a simple one to point to is revenue. Like what is the revenue growth target for the year? And starting with first quarter, breaking that down and what does that look like to accomplish in the first quarter? And then it would be up to the head of sales to go out and figure out how to achieve that. It's not me as the CEO digging into each sales strategy and telling that leader how to how to go out and find people and what channels to look through and what partnerships to build. It's more about, we've agreed that we're going to grow, call it, say 40% in this, or 40% for the year, 10% this quarter. And it's up to the leader to go out and figure out how to do that and execute on that.
Yeah. During our annual meetings, we would always define, I think we had 5 different metrics or outcomes that we would go for and track and, break those down. How do we get there? One of them obviously was revenue. We would have a monthly recurring number. We'd have a churn number. We'd have a employee count, client count, those kind of things. And that really set those were the targets. And that really set what metrics we were tracking on our scorecard. Everything trickled down from those larger outcomes too. So,
yeah. And I think, revenue is easy to point to. It's easy to measure, but there's other outcomes that are more fuzzy, little less tangible. And one that's really big for us right now is training. It can be difficult to define what does success in creating a training program look like. And so I've, worked closely with my people team leader to define, what does the outcome of training look like? What, at the end of the year, what do we want that to be? And then each quarter, what are the milestones that will get us there? And then, within those parameters of what we see as the outcomes, then the people team leader will go work with his team and other members of the team to create that outcome.
Dope. All right. So define leadership for me.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways you could look at leadership, but the way I see it, and this has been shaped by my executive coach, to me, leadership is creating a future that's different than it would have been without my leadership, and a future that attempts to fulfill on the needs of all relevant stakeholders.
So you're leading people to execute on that vision and create that future because you can't do it yourself.
Yeah. Yep. And it's a future different than it would have been without my leadership. There would have been a future without me, but it's being clear on clear on defining what does that future look like, and then getting the team on board and fulfilling on needs of everyone involved. It's not just about me and what I want and what I need. It's what works for the team, what works for our clients, what works for our processes, and fulfilling on all those needs, and then creating that future.
Well, it starts with you. It starts with you defining what you want your future to look like, and then you work around that. I think that if you're not, I know it sounds selfish, but we talked about this a lot too. If you're not doing that, then you would grow to resent the other things that happen around you, and you're not building anything for you either. And I think selfishly, we all should be looking at ourselves first. Put your mask on first.
Yeah, for sure. And that speaks to going upstream from the people experience. We're going upstream by talking about leadership, and really upstream further from that is what life do you want? Like what life and business do you want, and what creates that for you? And I don't think that's selfish at all. That's why a lot of us go into business, is to create the life that we want. And when we say that we attempt to fill on the needs of everyone involved, it's not that we get wishy-washy and get swayed by everybody's desires. It's being really clear on what the business I want to build, and recruiting people who share that similar vision. And it's not getting them on board to do everything for me. It's what's in it for everybody involved. And the business I want to build has a huge impact on clients. And part of what I want to build is to give people meaningful work, and in a way that lets them create the life that they want. And so it's really spelling out that vision, and then recruiting people who are on board with that, and everybody moving in the same direction that way.
Dope. So how do you create that vision of the future that you want to build without you?
Yeah, you just make it up.
Just make it up?
Yeah.
Where do you start?
There's nothing magic about it. It's just getting clear. Like what do you want, and looking at every domain in your life and getting clear on what you want that to look like.
So you got to create space to listen to yourself, and to listen to, I think I can speak on how I did it, and I have a lot of visions, and I don't know which ones to listen to, which ones are real and which ones are fading. So I had to create a lot of space to be able to know what I wanted. And
it comes in action, though. It's not that you stop everything in your life and you sit down and you're going to figure it all out. It's a process. So you have a starting point, and you could say, going back to my journey 15 years ago, I had a starting point of being a CFO of a startup company, and in the process of being in action and serving my clients, I've discovered over the last 15 years that vision of what I want to create for my life. And I'm still discovering it. I think it can change over time. And that doesn't mean it's wishy-washy and you're doing wild swings all the time, but it's a process of evolving. And as you move forward in your life, and as you discover what's important to you, and as circumstances change, as you start a family, and kids grow up, and health circumstances can change, or it can be lots of situations in life that influence that vision. But to me, it's always being present to what's working and what's not working, and always iterating on that purpose, but never losing sight of it, never not being intentional, because it's so easy to get swayed by the latest idea or other people's agendas of what they want, but always staying centered on what's the intentional life that I want to create.
Yeah. Well, having a vision and becoming clear on that, I think there are some elements to creating that clear future and that clear vision. You've shared something that came from your executive coach about that.
Yeah.
Would you like to share what those elements are? I'm trying to think of an acronym for that, and I've got a few. FALCI or Califa or FACALI, but I don't know the acronym. I don't have one yet, but I see the words lined up. So where do we start? Which one? Intention?
Yeah. Intention is just being clear, putting
Being
detail
intentional.
to,
Yeah.
it's kind of self-explanatory, just being intentional about what you want.
And that's what I was sort of getting at too when I said create space and figuring out what you want. You have to be intentional with your actions, like you said. You have to be intentional with what you're doing.
Yeah.
Now, how about alignment?
Yeah, and this is one it's hard to describe, but it's easier to experience than it is to explain. But it's really feeling what works for you and what's working for you in your life. And sometimes it can only be discovered by, like I said before, being in action and discovering what feels right to you, what aligns for you in terms of, example could be what aligns for you in how many hours you want to work and how you want to spend your time. Does it align for you to work, 12 hours a day, or does it align for you to work 8 hours and spend time with your family? So really it's in it. Yeah, I can only describe it as just what feels right. Intuition
For you, though. And
for you. Yeah,
it's not for others. Yeah.
No, it's very, very personal. Yeah.
All right. How about language?
Yeah, this is it's putting clarity to that intention. So you have...
Putting it in writing?
Yep. Writing is the easiest way to look at it. But yeah, just being clear. Writing out that vision.
So one thing that I used to get, and I still do, or I'm getting better at it, is I used to have a lot of confidence in what I was doing, what I was building, but I didn't have a lot of faith. And somebody told me that, and that resonated with me tremendously. Like, I was going at all of this with a lot of confidence, but I just still didn't believe that it all was going to work out, whether it was the rap stuff or the podcast stuff. I don't know if that happened. I think that happened with the firm too, early stages. So having faith is one of these other points. Talk about that.
Yeah. I describe faith as belief plus action. And I think, a lot of people might associate faith with more of a spiritual or religious context. And I say that could be accurate, but in this case, it doesn't have to be. It's more just believing
in
what's
yourself.
possible in the future. Yeah.
Believing in that vision that you have, because you had the vision, it's possible, but believing in yourself and knowing, it's not blind faith either. It requires action and the belief, and it still does require that confidence too. But if it's blind faith and you're not doing anything about it, that's where it's like, oh, my prayers have not been answered. Well, have you done anything about it? Kind of thing.
Yeah. So it's that belief plus action, and it's really calling on a force, a power that's greater than you. And again, that could sound like a religious thing, but it doesn't have to be. Like, I know many have had the experience of the universe aligning. Like, you get clear on what you want, you move forward, and somehow everything just aligns to make it work. And I think this is a function of faith, that the power that comes behind believing and being in action.
And the last one is commitment.
Yeah. So there's a reason this comes last, I believe, is you have your intention, you put language to it, you're clear about it. You're clear that it aligns for you in that direction. You have faith, you believe, you're in action, but being committed is really what is the staying power to it all. Because it's easy to, get going on a direction and flame out because it gets tough or for whatever other, or get bored or whatever other reason. But finding commitment is really doing what it takes to create that future. And it's not that you can't ever change or you're locked into what you decide at one point, but it's just doing what it takes is simply what commitment is.
Sure. No cool acronym here, but the intention, the alignment, language, faith, and commitment helps you get there. And that's the start. About a year ago, you suggested a book to me, and that book changed my life. I talk about it a lot on the show. I haven't done a book report on it yet. That could be in the near future. But it was Think Like a Monk, Jay Shetty. Talk to me about this book.
Yeah, this book had a big impact on me, and Jay Shetty himself, through his podcast and other channels, continues to have an impact on me.
On Purpose is the name of his podcast, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that's dope.
Yeah, and he's very interesting and a guy that's had a big impact on me. And yeah, the book Think Like a Monk, there's a lot to it, but one of the things that struck me the most was the idea of Dharma. And the exact details I don't have off the top of my head. It's been a little while since I've reviewed it, but basically,
I have them. We did a Varsity Tips episode, or a Nick's Tips episode on purpose. And I didn't even know his show was called On Purpose till afterwards, but that was an accident. But we talked about Dharma. We talked about finding your purpose. You want me to share what I always remember is there's the things that serve, well, there's that graphic again. Now I don't remember either. I don't know why I volunteered to say it, but there's that graphic of there's the things that you love, that you enjoy doing, that don't really bring you any money or monetary gain economically or anything like that. But those are your passions. And then your purpose is more of the things that you do to make money and I don't know, but the Dharma is where those two collide, where your passion and your purpose intersect.
Yeah, really where you're creating value in the world for
creating
other
value
people.
in the world. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I shouted that out in a rap, and I've talked about that a lot, just passion and purpose and where they collide. And I feel like I found mine at least, is fun, bringing the fun back and having fun in what we're doing and bringing fun to the profession. That goes with the rap stuff and the podcast and all that.
Yeah, and I think these words that we just talked about that we don't have a good acronym for, whether you think of them in terms of those words or that exact process or not, that's really the thought process to discovering that purpose, is that intention, that alignment, all that goes into discovering what you're passionate about and what can create value for others.
Yeah, yeah. So, book recommendation, Think Like a Monk, for anybody looking to find their purpose.
Yeah.
So, how do we create this people experience?
Well, that's what we're going to dig deep on for the next few episodes. But there are a few elements of it that we can touch on now, just to give a preview.
Sure.
And we talked about some of those already. You talked about leadership and vision. And then as we talk about the business more specifically, it really starts with designing what you want that business to look like. And it's translating, I think we've been talking a lot about, I think, personal purpose and personal desires in life. And then that translates to what does that look like in the business? And what I think the starting point is for that is having a mission or a purpose for the business. And that could be similar, or it could be distinct from what your personal purpose is. I think it has to be supportive, but in the context of sharing that with a team and rallying a team around, you start with that. What is the purpose for which your business exists? And obviously it goes beyond just your own personal fulfillment and your personal wealth or whatever that might look like. It's what impact are you having in the world? What could inspire a team to move around? Impact
and inspiration. Those are two great words. So we got passion and purpose, and impact and inspiration. And this course, I think, will help teach you how to do that and what that means.
Yeah. Yeah. So it starts with a purpose, and then it's designing the culture. What does the culture look like? And that's something we can dive into a lot deeper too. What are the elements of the culture of a business, and how can you be intentional? There's going to be a culture, and there's lots of great resources out there.
Whether you like it or not, there's going to be a culture.
Yeah, for sure. And some book recommendations that we can dive into more in the future episode. But there's How Will You Measure Your Life by Clay Christensen, and What You Do Is What You Are by Ben Horowitz. Those are great books on designing an intentional culture and not just letting that culture be whatever your team makes it, kind of unintentionally.
Yeah, cool. So we want to go over let's just go over the scope and Nimble's PX vision. So the parallels between the client experience and the people experience.
Yeah, so you started out earlier talking about how we talk a lot about the client experience, and we don't talk as much about the people experience. And I would say they're really in parallel, and there's a lot of similar, ways of looking at it, similar processes. And like you said earlier, I would argue that the team experience, the people experience, comes first. And if you create a good people experience, then the people, the team are going to create a great client experience. And so we can dig into that a little more.
And we'll be digging into the role of the owner or the leader or the CEO. So do you want to talk about Nimble's PX vision?
Yeah. So we have this laid out in specific bullet points that we envision our team to experience. So I can read through those. So they all refer to individual team members. What's in it for them? What can they count on as their experience as part of Nimble? So the first one is to understand, subscribe to, and see how they contribute to the Nimble vision. So that goes back to what I talked about before, is really getting clear on a purpose for which the company exists and getting people on board with that and helping them understand what that looks like.
It's the only way to get their buy-in.
Yeah.
It's the only way to get them rowing in the same direction.
Yeah. Yeah. And that starts with when people are hired, making sure that they're on board with that vision, and then continuing to reinforce it throughout the team.
Yeah, they can't even row if they're not on board.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Second one is that team members are enabled to create the current and future career and lifestyle that aligns with both their desires and the company needs. So this is where we marry the purpose for which the company exists and then the needs of the company with the desires that someone has to create the career and lifestyle they want. And it's about being intentional and giving, and I don't think this is very common in the business world, is really understanding what does a team member want out of their life and their career. And part of that reason is a lot of people just don't think about it. I want a job, I want to go to work and make enough of a paycheck. And I don't think about really what does the future look like? What is my own vision for my own life? And how does that line up with what the company needs? So
Expensify hires on that one principle. That's the most important question they have for any new candidate is, what is your goal? What do you want out of life? If you had all the money in the world, all the money that you could do anything with, what would you do with that? And how can Expensify help get you there? And you said most people don't even care or ask that. Like it's what can you do for me or our company? And it's almost like creating a separation between that. Expensify wants to blend it all together.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what we're talking about in this point.
For sure. What's the next one?
Next one is to have the tools, including training, needed to be successful.
Training. So that's like one of the outcomes you were talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think this is a good point to insert the idea that this is our vision, and we don't pretend to be perfect or there, or even that there is a destination with any of these. This is the vision we have, and it's the process of creating this. And so we put this in here knowing that our training right now is lacking. We have right now mostly kind of on-the-job apprenticeship style training that's not nearly as efficient or comprehensive as we know it could be. And so this is part of our vision for this year, is to build that out. But yeah, it's training.
Lean on the tools to help do that too.
Yeah, exactly.
Or you can lean on podcasts too. There's probably some shows out there employees could listen to.
Yeah, I think there's a few of those.
Yeah.
So the next one is to know where their performance stands at all times and experience the fulfillment of high performance. And I think this is something we can spend...
Feedback loop.
Yeah. Yeah, and it starts with defining what does performance look like. And I think a lot of businesses don't clearly define that. They have tasks and people come into a role and kind of do what they do, but the company itself may not even be clear about what does high performance look like in that role. So it's defining performance and then measuring the team member against what performance looks like. And really it's all about, obviously we need to perform as a business, and that's, it fills the needs of the business, which is important, but also it's for the team member. I don't know that most people feel good about being in a job and not feeling like they're, first of all, not knowing if they're performing or knowing that they're not performing. There's no fulfillment in that. But I think the greatest fulfillment, and this may trump every other experience or every other element of the team experience, is feeling what it's like to perform highly. And that virtuous loop is, as employees perform well, then they're fulfilled. And as each employee performs well, then the business performs, and it reinforces itself.
A virtuous loop. I like that. It spirals upward. All right. What's the next one?
They're fairly compensated and share in the success they contribute to.
Ooh, that's good.
So yeah, there's the element of making sure that compensation is in line with the market and it's fair. But to me, that's just a kind of a hygiene factor. That's just a starting point. What I want the team to feel like they're doing is sharing in what they're building. And that can look different in different businesses or different stages of a business, but knowing that they have a stake in what they're creating. We don't like to call it a bonus program, but it can be the easiest way to compare it to what other companies do. But we call it, and it's based on a framework, and I'm drawing a blank on the book now, but we call it stake in the outcome. And so we want everybody to have a stake in what we're all building together.
Well, that's a very strong way for them to follow those outcomes and create those outcomes, is if they are motivated to do so. So and when you say fairly compensated for the market, it also brings up an interesting and excellent point that you have two markets that you've got employees in. And so for somebody that doesn't outsource, you're going to pay a lot more, and you're going to compensate somebody a lot more to do the work here than they would if they were in, let's say, India or Philippines or another outsourced. So that's going to be interesting as we discuss outsourcing. Yeah.
Yeah. And for sure, we've been in that exercise in, both sides of the world is, what's a fair market here in the US and what does that look like in the Philippines, and being fair and more than fair in what everybody's making.
For sure. I know you've experienced that over time. You've had to make corrections to wages for your team in the Philippines too, just to keep it aligned with the market. So that's important. And this last point here.
Yeah, last one is have the opportunity to learn. And this is 4 points. And this comes from How You Measure Your Life by Clayton Christensen. And so it's a kind of a summary of everything else. So it's have the opportunity to learn, to grow in responsibilities, to contribute to others, and to be recognized for achievements. And what Clay Christensen says is this is comprehensive. This is what people are looking for in their work, is those 4 things.
Grow. That's an important one. Learning, growing, and achieving. All those are very important for anybody part of an organization. They have to feel like they're growing and not that they've hit a plateau in their growth or a rut too. So you always got to be pushing your people, challenging them. And I'm excited to get into the full curriculum. Do we want to preview all the sections and the episodes that we're going to go over?
Sure. Yeah, we can do that.
Notice that they all start with the letter C. So this falls in line with our other Nick's tips, varsity tips. We go with the P's. I've been talking about doing the C's. We're just doing alliteration here. This is beautiful. I love it.
Yeah, so we've been talking today about curriculum. So that's the first C.
The course.
Yeah, the course curriculum.
The second class.
Yeah. Lots of C's we can throw in there. The second one is culture, and there's even some C's as part of that. We'll talk more about mission, vision, values, core virtues, core values. So there's another C word there. Communication as part of that culture, another C word.
I love that I'm not doing this, that you're doing it too.
And Chat GPT may have had something to do with coming up with these C words. So
somebody had to ask it the command, though.
Yeah, exactly.
Somebody had to give it the commands. See, another C word.
So the next one is coaching. And that's a big part of what we do as Nimble. We see not as reporting or not as supervisors or bosses. It's coaching. It's all about coaching. And it's cascading, another C word, cascading leadership throughout the organization. It's about what is your organization org structure, what's your leadership structure now, what does it look like in the future? Another C word, career plans. And this is what we talked about before about getting clear. And I love another word. I love the example of Expensify of just getting clear and on what people want out of their careers and their lives. And so this is all
that out front. Yeah. And do they have an amazing culture and just an employee experience? I got to meet a lot of their team recently, and obviously in the context of Italy and the place that we were at, everybody's ecstatic, but they're working at a company that did that and that put that together, and that in and of itself is part of the reason to be ecstatic about working there. So
for sure.
Learned a lot going there, but let's go to the next one.
Yeah, the next one is create performance. Another
sort of a
C
cop
word.
out, but
a little bit.
I like it.
Another C word I didn't like quite as much, but competency. That's what Chat GPT said could work as well. But yeah, it's really about creating performance in the team and marrying that, what performance looks like in the team and what the team members want for their lives. And some of the mechanics of how we do that at Nimble, we have performance agreements with our team, and then our reviews check against those agreements. And training, compensation, all that kind of plays into the performance aspect.
So,
and then another C word is continuity, and other ways you can look at it: coordinate or conduct or collaborate. But it's really about how does your company operate? What's the operating system? A lot of listeners, like we talked about before, use EOS in the traction. And so that incorporates meetings, documentation, recruiting candidates, another C word. What are kind of the nuts and bolts and mechanics of creating that experience? And how do we do it at Nimble, and how do other companies do it?
So get ready for a fun ride. We got a lot more C words. We got some of the ones you said, as well as culture, competency, coordination, coaching, compensation, candidates, and compliance. There's plenty more that we're going to be talking about. So get your C's in line for this course.
Yeah, look forward to it.
So, well, thanks, Dave. This has been awesome. I'm going to learn a lot through this because it's sort of a compilation of all the other things that we've been talking about in these other Varsity Tips episodes. I just did another 5-part series on how to make varsity team. Now that you're on, for the listener, now that you're on varsity, you're here with us. Now what are you going to do with it? How are you going to lead the varsity team? Lead the team to victory.
Yeah.
So, all right. Thanks, Dave. I'll see you next time.
We'll see you soon. Thanks, Scott.
Peace out.